Hey guys, this is Preheat. Today we're going to be talking about how to set up weak auras so that you can have combat timers for your cooldowns, other various abilities, just really anything that you need to track in the fight that's timer based. So I know a lot of people are getting to Ny'alotha now. They're really starting to see some N'Zoth progress. So this is really a video for you if you're starting to see a boss that you haven't seen before, like Carapace or N'Zoth, maybe even something like Il'gynoth or Vexiona. And you are looking to have the optimal cooldown timers. Likely what you're going to be doing is heading over to Warcraft Logs and looking at what other mages are doing. You might even be looking at my guild limit. So the best thing you can do once you have the information from the logs on what fight timers you want to use for your cooldowns is to import that into the game in some way, right? And yes, you could just track out on Notepad, but I always find that the best way to handle something like this is to free up as much mental bandwidth as possible and really just kind of lean into the fact that World of Warcraft allows you to make your own add-ons and your own weak auras. So we're going to go ahead and utilize that to the fullest to get the most out of it today, and I will show you how. Let's go ahead and get started. So what we're looking at here is just Warcraft Logs. I'm going to be pulling up a report. So it's very important that we have something to kind of work off of. I'm going to pull up our most recent N'Zoth kill here. Okay, now let's say I want to know when I should use my combustion on Mthic N'Zoth. And I pull up complexity limits N'Zoth here from last week. And I look at combustion and I see a lot of different times here. Now, the reason why these times are so different is because every mage has a different assignment for when their combustions are used. If you're the only mage in the group, the best timers to use are the ones that fired up as here, in that you one additional combustion. That's using our strategy, obviously. But there are two generalized groups, right? So there's the first Psychist group, which is fired up. And then there's the second Psychist group, but there's a little bit of a variation here, depending on what your assignment is, if you're supposed to combust in the room, if you're supposed to combust on the pole. So that's where like the little differences kind of come into play. But without getting too much into it, I'm just going to show you the best ones. So if you're group 1, which is the Psychist group, your best cooldowns are going to be I'm fired ups. If yours are group 2 Psychists, then Eric's Mage, these cooldowns are going to be your optimal ones to use. So just for purposes of learning today, we're going to use fired ups. And the way that you actually get to the information that you want to see here in the log is you just go over here to events, and then this is going to tell you when you gain and lose combustion. All right, so now that we have this information, we need a way to put it into the game. So what I recommend is a little weak aura called Combat Timers and Alerts. I'm going to have a link to this in the description down below so that you can access it there. So go ahead and head over to wago.io and copy the weak aura import string. Once you have it in game, it's going to look something kind of like this. So it doesn't really look like much. You can't really expand it or make it do anything, but all of the good stuff is over here in the custom options. So head over to custom options. If you don't see it looking like this, it's probably in author mode. So if it looks like this, just click enter user mode. That's going to bring it back to reality there. You don't want to be in author mode. So what we have here is just a baseline of, or just an example of how you can set up entries, right? These are my Mthic N'Zoth timers, so they correspond directly with when I cool down in the fight, right? But today we're going to use fired ups. So obviously we combust on the pole here. Now this is using double on use. So I'm not actually going to set up a timer for this one because it's going to happen pre-combat. I'm actually going to be tracking when I throw my hands in the air as opposed to combustion. I find that that's the easiest way to kind of keep track of when you should be using your cooldowns. So having a timer for combustion is great, but honestly, if I see that timer, it's probably too late, right? So instead we're going to track when we should use our font. Okay, so font number 1 is going to be on the pole, so we don't need to track that one. Let's move on. Font number 2, 2 minutes and 9 seconds into the fight. Well, if we want to plug this into our add-on, we're going to take the 2 minutes, right? So that's going to be 120 seconds plus 9. So we have 129 seconds. But what we actually want is when I want to throw my hands into the air. So what I like to do is subtract about 21 from this. The reason why I do 21 instead of 18 is because I want to give it a couple extra seconds just for me to react once I see the message that I need to throw my hands in the air. So what we end up with is 108. So if we head over to the add-on, and in this situation, right, like if you had just installed this, you wouldn't have these timers. So I'm just going to get rid of those. So this would be empty here. Okay, so what we do is we click add entry, and then we give it that time we just figured out, 108. We're going to tell it how long to stay on the screen. 5 seconds is totally fine. And I'm going to do hands up, and I actually like to label these. So hands up number 2, and then you can even give it a color if you like. And if you're feeling really fancy, what I like to do is actually give it the actual icon as well. So here's the ID for the icon. Go ahead and plug that in. All right, so just double check it because sometimes the options don't save. Make sure that you get everything saved there. And if we're good to go, we're going to go ahead and click the plus sign to add another entry. So we have our first entry saved. Moving on to the second entry. Going back to the log, we can see that one occurs at 4:19. So if we follow the same steps we did before, right? You just do the 60 seconds times the amount of minutes plus the additional seconds minus the 21. So we end up with 238. We'll go ahead and plug that one in here too. Leave everything else the same. Give this label that's number 3. And then if we'd like, we can go and grab that icon again. So hopefully you're kind of getting an idea of how this works. You would just repeat this step over and over and over. So right now we have the 108, we have the 238, and then we would just continue to make these until we're done. So just like a cooking show, I'm going to go ahead and show you what it looks like once we're done with this. So once we're done, we should have all of the entries. And you just want to go through and double check that they're all correct. Now, this isn't going to do us any good unless we tell it how it should load. So head on over to the load option. Obviously choose in combat, right? Because this is going to be loading while we're in combat. And then we're going to want to actually specify additionally which fight we want to load on and which difficulty of the fight we want to load on. So I'm going to choose 2344, which is Azeroth. If you mouse over it, you can actually see it here in the note. And then the instance difficulty, this is my Mythic version. So if you fight the heroic version, the normal version, the Mythic version, this way you have all those separate and you don't have to go and delete the weak ore and reinstall it every time. Okay, so we've set to the correct difficulty. We've given it the encounter ID. We have it to only load in combat. Looks great. So it's a little hard to test this unless you're actually fighting the boss, but as long as you have successfully loaded all of the parameters for the timers you want to give, and you've given it the load options there for the fight, this will end up on your screen during a fight. So let's go ahead and look at an example of maybe what this would look like in combat. So I'm going to go ahead and head over to my Twitch channel real quick here. Okay. And we're just going to look at maybe, let's look at the sale. I think that this is the best way to kind of get an idea of this. Okay, so this is the heroic sales we were doing just the other day. I'm going to rewind it just a bit so you can see. This is actually using my heroic timers. All right, so we do the poll. Hands up 1. Now I don't have the icons turned on for this one, but it does show up on my screen and then it fades. So basically what you'll have is throughout the fight, you'll see this show up. That means it's time for you to raise your hands into the air. And then you just kind of continue from there. Anytime it tells you to use your trinket, use your trinket. Super duper simple. And really, this doesn't have to just be used for combustion timing. You can use this for anything that's timer based in the fight. So if there's anything else that you think might be something you might want to track aside from like DBM, bigwigs, stuff like that, it can be really, really useful for that sort of thing. But yeah, hopefully this helps. You know, it's a really simple kind of trick. I kind of feel like in a lot of ways, the stuff that I do is kind of a way for me to keep up with people like Fired Up and all the youngsters in the guild who are just like intuitively really, really insane at the game. So the best thing I found is to kind of find workarounds to make your UI kind of work for you, right? It's about working smarter, not harder. If you'd like, I do have the one that I set up with my full timers for heroic in a Pastebin. Now, obviously, the fight timer is going to be dependent on when the second Psychist gets killed, because that kind of determines the whole rest of the fight and how long it takes. But if you want to use my timers, feel free to, and then you can adjust those as needed. All right, so yeah, this video is a little different because I'm just kind of, you know, I'm kind of pretending like I'm streaming, just kind of talking to the camera about a tutorial. But if this is useful to you, like if you think tutorials like this on how to kind of set up specific weak auras or life hacks in a way to make, you know, fights easier for you to kind of get a feel for before you see them, let me know in the comments. And as always, like, subscribe, all that good stuff, and hopefully I see you soon. All right, thank you.